Good evening and welcome to Image Builders Presents a Conversation with Michael Carson. I'm your host, Michael Carson. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you once again for joining us here on Thursday night. If you're watching the broadcast via Facebook, make sure you share a comment, share the video, and also like it as well. If you're watching us via YouTube, make sure you comment, subscribe, and hit that bell so that you'll be notified of our broadcast. Please join the conversation and submit questions. You feel free to do that so that we can ask our guests the questions. You could join the conversation. You don't have to just watch. You could be a participant. So please make sure that you submit your questions either on Facebook or on YouTube. Also, if you're watching us and you choose to share this video on either platform, make sure you use the hashtag ImageBuilders. That's hashtag ImageBuilders. Tonight's show, I'm really excited about this show tonight because it is our first show in our what I'm calling our First Responder series. So this is just part one of that show, and I'm pleased to be joined by a good friend, former fire chief, Dr. I. David Daniels, and hopefully a new friend who lives not too far from me, former firefighter Charles Reddick. So welcome, gentlemen, to the show. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on Conversations with Michael Carson.
Yeah, good to be here.
Good to be here. So thank you guys. So I'll ask the question I always ask my guests. Please tell the audience a little bit about yourself. We'll start with Dr. Daniels.
Well, if I were to describe myself in the short amount of time that I have, I'm basically the product of a teenager from Seattle, Washington, striving to be everything that my mom thought I could be. And that's really it. I spent the majority of my life trying to make my mom proud and make my family proud. And, when I've gotten the opportunity to do some things that particularly that she didn't get an opportunity to do, I've tried to dive into them and get the best out and just contribute to the world wherever I can.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Charles.
Well, I'm a product of Boston, Massachusetts. I too had a single mom. I had a single mom that did everything. She cleaned people's houses to make sure I had food on the table. She used to tell me no matter what I did or where I went wrong at sometimes, that I had a good foundation and I'd always come back to being the man I'm supposed to be. So today I think I'm the man I'm supposed to be because of those statements. I'm a person that I'm a jack of many trades.
He is.
So are you a master of many trades?
Nope.
As well?
Nope. I like to tell people I know a lot about a little, but I don't know nothing about everything.
Hey, that's good. That's good. I'll take that. As a kid, I worshiped firefighters. I wanted to be one. I had my red firefighter hat. I had a robe with the fire engines on them. Also, as a kid, I was in a house fire and got up close and personal with firefighters, and that even fueled my energy to want to become one. Fast forward a number of years later, I wasn't able to become a firefighter only because I didn't have a driver's license at the time. Oddly enough, when I entered the military, that was my first request to be a firefighter. Why did you guys want to become firefighters? We'll start with you, Charles. Why did you want to become a firefighter?
Money. It was money.
Okay.
I went to my brother, who was 14 years older than me. He was a Boston firefighter. So we are, family of firefighters, me and him.
Okay.
So when I went to school to play baseball and football, I always thought I'm not doing that. I'm gonna go be in an office somewhere.
Right.
Things didn't work out like I thought they were going to work out. And he was always like, I'm doing pretty good. So one day I said, you know what, I'm gonna take this test. So when I started, it was about, securing a career, not working, because I was doing Department of Youth Services stuff, and because I didn't finish school. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take the test. I did pretty well on the test. Then it just morphed into I loved what I did. So I started for one reason, but so I didn't look at it like, oh, my brother's a firefighter, I want to be a firefighter. Because unfortunately, my history with firefighters wasn't quite the same. I didn't look at them with reverence or nothing like. No, I didn't.
Okay, that's honest. What about you, Dr. Daniels?
Well, I kind of stumbled into the fire service. I was working a construction project. So out of high school, actually got a wrestling scholarship to a small college in Wisconsin that lasted about 3 weeks, because when I got there, I found out I was one of only 7 Black people. There was a bunch of cows, and I'd never been away from home very long. So after about 3 weeks, and the inability to take care of myself because I couldn't get a job being a scholarship athlete and nobody to send me money, I just went back home. And I found myself working construction, and I was standing out doing a sign crew. That was back in the days you didn't need any training; they just hand you a sign and tell you to stop the traffic. But it doesn't get cold in Seattle all that often, but it was this particular day. And I tell people it was so cold that particular day. I was standing there praying that someone would just come around the corner, hit me, and kill me and get it over with, because I hated what I was doing.
Wow.
That led to a conversation with one of my colleagues. He says, I'm going to go take the Seattle firefighter test. And you want to go? I said, sure. So we both went to take the test. I passed it. He failed it. And the rest is history.
Wow. Interesting story. Interesting story. I want to just shift it a little bit and just talk about, so Charles, you said it was your brother. David, you said you kind of took it because you wanted to get out of, the condition that you were in. If someone is, again, like me at a young age at the time, desire to be a firefighter, what path should they take? What would you recommend to them?
Go ahead.
Besides just taking a test.
Oh, okay.
What is that?
Okay.
Really?
If a young person said to me, now it also depends on where you're at, because in Massachusetts, to become a firefighter, you got to take civil service exam, and then to go up the ranks, you have to study. There is no, in some places they appoint you to be a lieutenant or something like that. Well, in Massachusetts, you have to study and pass the test. So I would say definitely it's all right. This is something we have to understand, that this job it's not a lineage for us. There were times when, you look at the movies or the shows, and then there were white firefighters spraying Black people with hoses, not Black firefighters spraying Black people with hoses.
Yeah.
So we didn't have that lineage. And if you go further back, this job was really in the Northeast was given to the Irish Americans. So I would just really try to start that new lineage and say, look, oh no, this is for you. And what I want you to do is I want you to study, because I want to see you making policy. And I would drive that at them, a young person.
So, I mean, and I saw that you were a firefighter in Boston, and you're from Boston. And so that had to be particularly, I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but that had to be particularly challenging being coming from Boston, in the situation in Boston, as a fireman and or a police officer, I would think, because you talk about the lineage, you talk about the stuff being handed down, to other people who are already in the system. So how did you, was that something you felt you had to combat early on? Or that it was just more so I took the test, or you had the connection via your brother who was already there?
If anybody was watching this, there was a firefighter with me in Boston, they would say, They did not like him because
Mm,
I wasn't the guy that was going to take too much. And so
right.
when you say, did I go through a lot? No, I didn't. Um, and it hurt me what I had to do. I have a friend of mine, a doctor, uh, who I actually dance. So we were talking, and I left the job with blood pressure issues. So what I did for the longest time, I remember going to firehouses where I was one of few, if one black. I would create this energy around me that people be like, nah, we heard about him. We're not gonna mess with him. Leave him
Mhm.
alone. So nobody would say, certain things to me. I'm a halfway decently spoken man, so I can defend myself on most topics. So after I would give them my mind, they really didn't want to talk to me. So I sort of kept people at bay. So I didn't really, and then I don't know if you could tell, I'm a good sized guy. I've always been that. And so
Right.
I would give this impression like, we're gonna leave him alone. So I didn't go through things that other people, but there were horror stories, amazing horror stories, but I didn't
Right.
really go through them.
What about you in Seattle, David? I know we've had these conversations, and then you rose to the ranks to become a fire chief. So, how was that transition from a firefighter to a fire chief, and some of the things you had to, what would you tell a young person that they should, that they should look out for?
The first thing I would tell them is that in the United States, the fire service is the third least diverse publicly funded thing that we do in this country. It
Mm,
was created for and by white men, and many organizations are still not open to you being there. Now, knowing that doesn't mean you still shouldn't do it if you want to do it bad enough. But
right.
I mean, you shouldn't be naive about what it is you're trying to get into. I can tell you that. So while Charles was I wasn't a very big guy.
Mm,
I used the fact that I studied hard and the reality was I was a little smarter in the information than some of those folks were.
mhm.
I don't, and that's how I got by, is that I always knew the answers to the test questions because I read harder. I mean, again, I don't think I was necessarily had a higher IQ or anything, but I just worked at it more than they did. And I actually thought that a lot of those folks liked me, and I played along for years.
Mhm.
And so I didn't get, some of the issues of other people because I played along, oh yeah, okay, I'll go do that. I'll go do this. And I thought that the higher I got in the industry, the easier it would get, and actually got harder. It got much harder, and it got to that, and that's the reason that I left, is that it got to the point. Actually, the last fire chief's job I had, I basically got run off by a group of white people who didn't necessarily enjoy the fact that I was there, and a lot of that, some of that had nothing to do with me, and some of it did, because if I were a white man, I'd likely, matter of fact, I'd probably still be a fire chief today if I were a white man. But I say that, and particularly in this time that we're in, sometimes when you're that blunt about it, people clutch their pearls and go like, "Oh, you should." But that was just my experience. And again, I'm not
Mhm.
at this point. I'm not angry at anybody. But that was my reality. Is that the system wasn't set up for me. The system wasn't set up to help me be successful. So I was successful despite it. But then after a while, I kind of had enough of it, and decided to find some other things to do because I didn't feel like I was welcome.
Right. So even at a fire chief level, you weren't able to like influence maybe somewhere like Charles. I know you were in different states or whatever, but some of the other black men or black women who served under your
Oh,
authority,
oh
were
yeah,
you
yeah.
okay?
I was definitely able to help them. The
Okay.
challenge was trying to help me, because
Okay.
when you're trying to mentor, and again, you asked a question about younger people coming up and all that type of thing. So there are, last count, there are 19 other people or 20 other people who used to work with me that I supervised at one point, who were fire chiefs themselves, state fire marshals, and they were black and white and women and all kinds of stuff. The challenge was, when you're the person who's trying to do that, you got to take all the slings and arrows. So if you're the guy who's trying to be out in front, you got to take all the slings, and they can't really help you as much because they don't have necessarily the authority to help you and don't have the power to help you. But some of them, because they're so afraid, because they really know what it is anyway, they don't have the courage to help you either. When you start getting beat up, people run and go like, well, I ain't going to take, and I didn't have enough big dudes like Charles to kind of, seriously, because there's some times that's really what I need is somebody to go talk, but I didn't have any of those people. So you got to take it yourself.
Right.
See, I would
go ahead, Charles.
See, I would have asked to be his driver. Like, I was gonna say driving, so like in Massachusetts, you got a driver.
Right.
And if he had said, Charles, hey, will you drive for me? I'd have been like, okay. But here's the other thing about him.
Okay.
Not all black chiefs, black lieutenants, black captains, they're not all cool.
Yeah.
Some of them do bidding. Some of them do the bidding. I've had some of my worst experiences.
All skin folk and kin folk.
Yeah. I've had some of my worst experiences with black officers. But if I knew David was about it and a stand-up man, I'd have been, I'll drive for you. And if someone says something to him, I'd be like, let me go talk to him. And yeah.
So recently, I think it was the Atlantic I read, and there were 9 firefighters who were suspended over racist memes and
New York.
New York.
Yeah.
They were suspended. No, it was about the firefighters in New York. It was an article in the Atlantic. 2021, I know we're not supposed to be surprised. And I know based on some history I've read about it and based on conversations, David, you and I've had, that it's just like any other organization. It's a good old boys network. So to the degree that they get checked on this stuff, or if they ever get checked on it, what does that say that they were suspended without pay and some of them were actually fired? Does that just does that mean anything? Does that mean that not necessarily it's a lot of movement is happening, but that this is even being taken seriously by some fire departments or cities for that matter?
Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charles.
Okay. I have a friend who was actually fired from the job because he posted things on the internet.
Okay.
And they were political things when the last president was in office.
Okay.
Well, the reality is that those are the first people they'll come after. But then you're talking about money. So the thing that influences that directs most people's actions is, look, we fired that dude. So unfortunately, we got to do you. I hate it because you're Patty O'Malley's sister's brother's cousin.
Right.
But if we don't fire you like we fired that person, it will cost us a lot of money.
Okay. So it's more about the liability and less about the actions. That is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree that again, this country has a past, it has a history, and also has a present that is very connected. This country was built on chattel slavery. The Constitution was written by folks who were slave owners. Because we've never had the truth and reconciliation associated with telling the truth about that, it continues in a lot of forms. So I absolutely applaud what New York City did. I do. Right. I mean, because it's the right thing to do if you say that you're interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's the right thing to do. Because in the past, first of all, they wouldn't even talk about it. Now, post George Floyd, people are talking about it. And some people are being about it. I'm not sure in every case what people's motives are, because I don't know. I don't have any idea. But that kind of thing does send a message that they might be interested. The other challenge, though, is the fact that even in New York City, there's 12,000 firefighters, and the department's been around since the 1800s, and they still seem to have difficulty finding more than about 300 or 400 Black people to be members. And so that's kind of a challenge. Remember what I said. There's only 2 occupations in this country: secondary school teachers and EMTs that are less diverse and predominantly publicly funded. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate, the steps that we're taking in this particular case, but, that's not the issue. Is in the system itself that
Right.
the fact that you couldn't get a job because you didn't have a driver's license. There are other people who got a job didn't have a driver's license. They did.
Yeah.
Because I met one of my deputy chiefs in Seattle told me when he came on in 1949, he went down, interviewed with the fire chief, and they hired him. And he went to work that night. He didn't have anything.
Right.
He barely gotten out of high school. But
Right.
they didn't. The fire service didn't traditionally do physical fitness until the 70s. Why? Because women came in. So again, the reality is this is just the history of the industry. And those who are going to try to change it, the elected and appointed officials, it's not going to change overnight. And it takes courage, and it's going to take action too. You can't just talk about it; you got to be about it.
One final question about the system, and then I want to shift narrative to service, and then talk about what you guys do outside of now that you've transitioned from firefighting. How does California, which is a liberal, one might say it's a liberal state, but it's not completely liberal. How do they get away with their fire camp program, whereby they have over 1,000 inmates fighting wildfires for them and paying them a couple dollars a day, not an hour, a day, and then when they get out, they can't possibly get a job as a firefighter or even in in any capacity with the fire department. How do they get away with that? And is that something? I understand it's more on a probably a legislative or a state level, but do firefighters speak out about that and about the dangers of that and the dangers to the individuals who are getting whatever this training is to fight wildfires? Charles, we'll start with you.
Well, was that the 13th Amendment, David?
Say again?
Was that the 13th Amendment?
No.
It allowed you to still have slave labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 13th. Yeah, it's a 13th if you're.
It's still allowed you to have slave labor.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yes.
Because this is what we need to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I don't. As long as the firefighters, first of all, I would never be a forest fighter. I would never do that. That's a whole different game. I would never do that. I did a little bit of that, and I was like, this is not cut out for me.
Yeah.
But it's almost always a losing battle. So I'm not going to go too far into it because I don't know a lot about what you're saying. But as long as those firefighters know that their real job is protected, I don't think they care.
Okay. What about you, Dr. David?
I would say that is a function of the criminal justice system. It has nothing to do with the fire service, to be quite honest. And again, I thought Charles was talking about anyway, not to get into too much detail, but the 13th Amendment to the Constitution allows you to keep slaves as long as you can keep them in jail, basically.
Right.
And that's really what this is. I mean, it's another function of that. It is, in my opinion, unsafe for the people who are doing it because we really have technology that could probably do a better job if we just invested in that. Right. And it also takes jobs away from people who are not necessarily locked up. And if you train people, there should be a pathway once they do their commitment to society to be able to get a job, But again, most of that is a function of the criminal justice system, period, because once you have quote unquote paid your debt to society, there's a lot of people, you can't get a job doing much of anything, and
you sure couldn't get a job being on the fire service.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
But it's a function of this criminal justice system more so than as a fire service thing, at least in my opinion.
So I want to shift the narrative to service. I didn't say this earlier, but thank you both for your service as firefighters and as a fire chief. Part of what you did was rescue. Give me a story that still sticks with you today in any capacity as a firefighter, and how it might have impacted your life. in like 60
Go ahead, David.
seconds, if you can.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I would say there are actually too many. The one that is most impactful for me, I was a member of the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Task Force system, and I responded to the Oklahoma City bombing. And we got there 5 days after, when they still thought people might have still been alive and all that type of thing. And we didn't rescue anybody alive, to be quite honest. But I went back a year later for the memorial. And that's one of the most impactful things that's ever happened to me, when I met the relatives of the Coverdale twins. There were two twins that I don't remember, was one or both of them died in the Mora building as a result of the collapse, basically. And how thankful they were of our efforts. It just felt really genuine. It felt like, even though we weren't able to save those babies, that our effort meant something, and that I'll always remember that, and like I said, this was even after the fact, but it just meant something, just the effort that we put in and the risk that we put ourselves at, because it wasn't, there are people who even got injured, even days after. So that really meant something.
Charles, you want to share?
It wasn't a fire. I was working in an area of Boston called Dorchester. We had a run to a infant EMS, infant first aid. I walked in, and I had my little bag, my little infant stuff. And then the guy who I worked with, Eddie, said, "Charles, don't bother." And, I looked around the room, and I was kind of surprised, because the mother was in the bed, but there was someone over her, like kind of just, making sure she didn't move. The baby was in the crib, and his hands were over his head. And I didn't realize what happened. Then I walked out, and Eddie started talking, and he said that, that she ended her baby's life. And
Wow.
I was sort of shaken up, because my oldest son was just born 2 weeks before that.
Wow.
So I was really messed up for a long time. I didn't understand, it was troubling. It was very troubling.
Yeah, and I often think about, firefighters, police officers, EMS. You guys see death, see some of the worst of people, some of the worst of things, or people in some of the worst conditions. How do you cope with that? How are those the resources that are available to you? How are you able to cope with that, even after your service? Is there something that you have to do to make sure you cope with some of the trauma that you've experienced, or some of the things that you witnessed, or is it that's just part of the job? We just go on. How do you cope with that?
Both.
How have you coped with it?
Both.
Okay.
Boston does have a very good EAP program.
Okay.
But I think it probably helped more, because I have a friend of mine who went through the EAP program with the Boston Marathon bombing.
Okay.
And so there is counselors. And then they will send you to an outside counselor if you need to.
Okay.
But part of it is a part of the job. It's if you're unlucky enough to go and find somebody, because if somebody says, they died by fire, they died by smoke. They might have got burned, but they died by smoke. But this is still not a pretty sight.
Yeah.
So most fire departments who are becoming more advanced, they'll come and reach out to you to see if you're all right. Mm-hmm. And the more, macho, the machismo part goes away, the more you say, yeah, I think I do need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, even when the story I told you, I didn't speak to nobody. Mm-hmm. I just understood that it's a part of the job I do.
Mm-hmm. According to, I was on the IAFF's website, and there were 68 or so faces, and one was just a badge of individuals who passed away due to COVID-19. That might not be all of them. Those were, I think that's what I counted while on their site. How's COVID, in your opinion, shifted responsibilities or how individuals operate as firefighters, or has it really not changed too much?
Yeah, so I was actually on another call today with another group, and I shared something that, I don't know, Michael, if I've ever, or you've heard me say this before, but I believe what disasters do is make you more of what you already are. They don't really change much anything. So folks have talked about, the pandemic, and what the pandemic has showed what we really were. Those systems that were resilient and prepared and had plans in place have actually, some of them have done okay, that they've done fine. It's been an inconvenience. And they haven't lost a lot of people because they have followed the science. They did all the things up front. I told folks when this started, I wanted to be on a survivor train, and I still plan to be. But on the other hand, things that were slightly dysfunctional got more dysfunctional. So you're going to find this year that the leading cause of firefighter and police officer death is probably going to be COVID. But the year before, it was suicide. So, I mean, and it's some of the same kinds of things. It's some of the same kinds of emotional things going on with people. That's what the issue. And it's just more of what we already are, and we need to pay more attention to how people are exposed. You asked us about our rescues and all that type of thing, and both of us told you a story why we didn't save anybody, because we all feel like rescuing people, that's what we're supposed to do. We don't see that as that big of a deal. I rescued somebody. But the ones that stick with you are the times when you didn't. Even if you really could, they stick with you, and you go like, if you second guess yourself and wonder, had I gotten there quicker, could I? That's what the human side of us, because we want to help. Most people want to help, and those are the ones that stick with you. And until recently, we were told, I mean, in our careers, most of us were told, at least toward the end of our careers, oh yeah, we probably should do something about that. But they're now getting to the point, thank God, that they're more serious, because we've got a different generation of people saying, look, I'm not sure if I want to do some of those things I saw my dad and maybe if my mom got on do. So we're getting better in that regard, but there's a lot of work to do, not only in the fire service, but a bunch of other, industries, about helping people deal with what's going on, what we've exposed them to as employers, helping them feel, better about it while they're doing it.
That's an excellent point. We're actually past the 7:30 hour, but I want to spend a few more minutes and talk about what your endeavors now. Charles, you're launching an archery, or you already have an archery business. Talk a little bit about that. I know you coach, you are a coach, you are dabbling, and I want to talk to you about the firearms thing as well. I think I saw that in your bio that you also do firearms. So I definitely want to connect with you on that on a personal level. But talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing and some of the things you want the audience to know about and how they can connect with you.
Well, sometimes, I heard something. I was watching YouTube one day, and they were talking about Angela Lansbury, and she had made a quote that sometimes the best things happen in the second part of your life. Yeah. Now, if 40 is the first part, then the rest is the second part. But we're not going to get into the actual age. But, since moving down here, I have a framing shop. I frame artwork. I'm a USA archery instructor, and I plan on launching Black Arrow Archery next summer. It's for kids and adults. Okay. I also am a certified weapons instructor. And I do that now. So I truly believe, like, all these things I do now, like the artwork started because I have a lot of Black artwork. And so I was going into the shops and I was like, I'm not paying all that money. So I started going in Hobby Lobby, ear hustling and stuff, like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then one day I saw something in the paper, learn how to be a professional framer. So I took on it, and then I do work for people. I do work for Brother David.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the other stuff I do, it's because I really have this philosophy that the second half of my life, I'm going to live it like it's a hobby. If it's not something I wouldn't do as a hobby, I'm not going to try to take it on to earn money. So I'm not going to go work for anybody and have somebody talk to me any particular way just to make a dollar. So if I can do something and I can live my life like a hobby, that's what I choose to do.
Excellent, excellent. And how can people reach you if they want to learn, if they want more information on, how to fire firearm and the services and the things and your framing business? How do they reach you?
Well, I could get my number out and somebody can call me that way, or put it up if you want me to do whatever you want me to do.
I mean, well, however you advertise, however you want people to know about your services. So, and then we can.
Well,
I can
about the framing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I can
Please
always
finish.
tag it to this video. So after the fact, we can do that.
Okay, you can do that. The framing, I tend to, I don't want to be overwhelmed because I'm not trying to turn it into and you could ask David. I said, David, this is not going to be in a hurry. Hear me now when I tell you this. You'll save a lot of money and it will be done well, but I'm not going to do it in a hurry. So let's get that. Let's understand that right now. So if you understand that and you don't come to me with like, oh, I need it yesterday, because I'm not going to do that. I have to be honest with that. I'm just not going to do that.
So there's a lot of intentionality. You're intentional about it, and you take your time. And
very. I don't. The only thing I ask people is when it's ready. Don't leave it over my house too long because it might get sold. Don't leave it over here too long. But
it might be part of your
whatever information you can tag it.
It might be part of your.
I do the weapons instruction now. And it's important to me, the weapons, it's about safety. It's about, the last 4 years, more Black Americans have bought firearms than anybody else. Anybody else. Anybody else. Because we did the same thing the white Americans did with Obama. We just flipped the script when Trump came in. We don't trust, we're going to do this. And so many people, especially in the South and in the North, have gotten weapons, but nobody has taught them how to. And this is everybody. So understand this. When we do our classes, it's not only for Black people, but my passion is that every Black American, on one Dave Chappelle special, he said, hey, we're going to have to do is save America. Every legal Black person going to have to get a gun, because they're not going to change laws. But why can't we partake in that Second Amendment like everybody else?
Fair enough.
Why can't we, like David said earlier, all right, it wasn't written for us, but we're American citizens.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I hear you. So Dr. David Daniels, you're a new doctor. I can say that. I'm so glad to have been able to share in that experience with you. So talk about your business and what you have on the horizon.
And thanks very much. I'm pretty certain that I'm the only Black PhD in occupational health and safety in the entire country. There might be another one out there someplace, but there aren't very many because Black people don't talk about safety all that much, not occupational safety. Safety in our community generally means law enforcement. Mm-hmm. But what happens is that lack of conversation, so 23% of the workforce is non-white, but 38% of the folks who get hurt at work are non-white.
Okay.
If you, I doesn't matter which occupation you're in, I can almost guarantee you that if you look at the injury rates in the organization, that women and people of color get injured at higher rates than they should be in terms of their representation. And a lot of it has to do, again, with the system that we lived in. The Occupational Safety and Health Act was passed in 1970. 535 people voted on it. Only 11 of them were Black. The system wasn't set up for Black people to be safe at work. And we've got to help educate each other about getting a job is nice, but if you get hurt, you can't make a paycheck. Workers' comp is going to get you 60% of your salary. These are things that my community, our community really needs to know. And there aren't a whole lot of people to share it with them. And that's what I do. So my company, ID2 Solutions, that's what I do is I try to help organizations, whether it be governments or businesses or whatever, help them figure out how to keep people from getting injured and killed at work. And that's what I do.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you both for joining the show tonight. I really appreciate it. I want to give you 30 seconds or so to just talk about what or who inspires you at this moment. And then once you're done, I'll conclude the show, and then don't go off yet. I want to talk to you guys off mic, but Charles, who or what inspires you?
Wow. Life inspires me because we only have one. Yeah. I might not share the exact same spirituality as everybody else, but life, to enjoy this one we have, this inspires me to be a better person, do different things. I've been lucky all my life. My mom, she told me one time I could do whatever I choose to do. So when I tell you I was a jack of a lot of trades, you're talking about a guy who played volleyball in college, fenced, Lindy Hop dance, whatever. I've done so many things, and life has encouraged me to do that. So life inspires me. If I see something, nothing is off limits because I'm a Black man. Yeah. Because everybody will look at you and say, "You're not supposed to do that. Black people don't do that." Yeah. So life inspires me. If I see something different, I'm doing it.
Excellent. Thank you. David will give you the final word.
So I think I'm Charles may be my brother from another mother, which is definitely possible because Dad got around. But I have a similar drive in that I've set a life goal for myself. I'm trying to live to 110, and I figure I'm just a little over halfway. And I don't have a lot of things off limit to me either. Most of the things I've done in my life, I was the only Black person doing them. But I'm not sure why that should limit me. If I'm interested in it, first I want to be good at it. I don't do stuff that I'm not good at, period. If I'm not good at it, I go find something else. Yeah. So I try to be really good at whatever it is I take on. And again, is there somebody out there better than me at it? Well, they might be. And then I'm going to learn something from them. I'm a lifetime learner. I got a lot of years in front of me to learn more things. And I think that's really what drives me. I just like to learn. I just want to know. And when I find something I really like, I want to learn more about it.
Excellent. Thank you, brother, so much for joining me tonight on Conversations with Michael Carson. For all of you that have tuned in on YouTube, thank you so much for sticking around. It seemed like we were hacked and the platform wasn't streaming this properly on Facebook, so we'll have to post it on Facebook. I'm not sure what happened, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. Make sure you join us next week. Next Thursday is Veterans Day. I'm a veteran. I'll have a couple of veterans on with me, and we're going to honor and talk about our veterans and how we can show some love to them, but also challenge the systems, if you will, to do better by veterans. Again, you've been watching Conversations with Michael Carson. We will see you next week. Gentlemen, don't log off yet. Thank you for tuning into Conversations with Michael Carson. Join us here each Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for engaging and insightful conversations. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have not already done so, don't forget to click the share button on Facebook and the subscribe button on YouTube. The conversation doesn't stop here. Head over to Instagram and join us on Michael Carson Jr. starting shortly. See you soon, and until next time, continue blessings.